Hello guys, everybody, welcome back to this video. So today I'm going to be doing a continuation of the series of my shirt pattern. I've done a shirt pattern, I've done the collar pattern. Today I'll be doing the sleeve, how to fix the sleeve cuff and the placket. So sit back, relax and enjoy. Watch this video to the end so that you can see how I drafted the sleeve for my shirt pattern and also how I was able to sew them together. So I'm sure you're going to like this video. If you do like this video, please give me a huge thumbs up and watch till the end. So first, what we'll be needing is our pattern paper. I have my pattern folded into two. Now we folded the sleeve into two, and next is the length of the sleeve. My sleeve is 23 inch. I took away 3 inch and I have 20 inch as length. So I've just placed 20 inch on my pattern paper, and after that we're going to be working on the cap height for the sleeve. So for the cap height of the sleeve, I'll make use of 5 inches. So I just placed 5 inches. So you place your tape from the sleeve head, that is from the top of your pattern paper, and then mark where 5 inches is and connect that to the straight line. So I've just done that now. The new line I have just drawn is for the sleeve cap height. So now we've gotten the cap height and the length of the sleeve. So on that length of the sleeve, we're going to place the wrist measurement. My wrist is 8.5 divided by 2. I have 4.25. I've placed that on that line. Now on your shirt sleeve, you notice that there are little pleats on the shirt sleeve. So I'm going to be adding 0.75 on that point. So aside from my 4.25, which is the my wrist measurement, I added 0.75 for the pleat around the sleeve cuff. So now I've just added that there, and now I've just marked that down. I'm just going to use my marker to illustrate and highlight that point very well. So after we've gotten that point, move up to our bicep line. Now on our bicep line, take your measurement, your bicep measurement. Mine is 13 inches, and I divided it by 2. That will be 6.5. Now on my shirt pattern, I added half an inch for ease on the shirt pattern. So 6.5 plus half an inch, that would be 7 inch. So on my bicep line, I will place 7 inches for my bicep line. On my bicep line, I'll place 7 inch as the bicep measurement for the sleeve. So I'm just going to do that now. After placing that measurement, I'm just going to use a free hand to connect from that line upward. Now on the sleeve head, you can just go ahead and measure 1.5 or 2 inches upward so that it will enable you to do the connection to the curve. I'm not going to do a lot of calculations because I already have a video on how to draft your basic sleeve pattern. So I'm just connecting from that 1.5 inch that I drew. I marked on the head of the sleeve to where the bicep line is. I'm just going to draw a curve that looks like what we know, what we are familiar with on our sleeve. So this would be for the front part of the sleeve, and for the back I will also go in and also draw a line. So I recommend when you're drafting your pattern, you use a pencil. That way you get your lines correctly and also your measurements will turn out correctly. So now that we've gotten the curves for the front and the back sides of our sleeve, next we're going to connect from the bicep line to the wrist line. We're going to use a pattern master to connect all of the points together, and I'll go back in with my marker to highlight all of the points that we've connected on our sleeve. So basically our sleeve pattern is ready, the front and the back part is ready. So next what we are going to do is to add seam allowances. I'm going to be adding half an inch seam allowance all around the pattern, and then after adding the seam allowance all around it, I'm going to be cutting out the back parts of the sleeve before cutting out the front. So you can see I've cut out my sleeve, and I'll also go ahead to cut out the front part of the sleeve. So we are done with this pattern. Next I'm going to use my marker to also indicate the grain line on the sleeve, so that will help us to know where our placket placement is going to be, and also make sure that you indicate on your sleeve which part is the front and which part is the back. So on the back part of our sleeve, we're going to take our tape from the grain line, which is the center line, to where the to where the main sleeve line is, not including of the seam allowance, to where the main sleeve line stop from the center line, and we are going to get the midpoint. Now, after we've gotten the midpoint, from that midpoint, you're going to take the length of our placket. So basically, normally you would take 4 inches maximum for the sleeve placket. So I'll just take 4 inch from that line. Note that the measurement is not, the seam allowance is not included in this measurement. So I've taken 4 inch from the original sleeve wrist, and I've drawn it upward, which is 4 inches for the placket. So note that the placket always falls at the back side of the sleeve. So after we've gotten the placement of the placket, I'll just go ahead and label all of the points that I'm supposed to label on my sleeve. I'm just going to indicate the grain line, the measurement for the wrist. I used 8.5, and also I'm going to, like I say, make sure that you indicate what part is the front and what part is the back. So now, after getting all of this, this is basically what we have for our sleeve. Our sleeve is ready and we are good to go. So that's the grain line right there. I'm just going to also indicate that as the grain line. So after we've done this, next we are going to move to the cuff. Okay, so we move to the cuff now. For the cuff, you need to get yourself a fresh pattern paper, and after you've gotten a pattern paper, we'll go back to our shirt sleeve, and we are going to be taking our measurement. You can see the point where we have that point, those 2 points that I marked before adding the 0.75 inch. That is where your measurement is going to be. So from one point to the other, you're not adding the 0.75 inch we added for the pleats of the cuff. I hope you remember, for the sleeve, sorry. I hope you remember that. So on our pattern paper, we'll draw a straight line, and after you've gotten the measurement of your wrist, you go back to the straight line that you drew on the pattern paper, and you're going to be placing the 8.5 inch on that straight line. So on that straight line at the beginning and where the 8.5 inch is, you're going to place a mark at both sides. Now, after you've placed a mark at both sides, you're going to be taking the length of the cuff. Now, I said previously that the length of my sleeve was 23 inch, and I took away 3 inches from it, and that would be for the cuff. So we are going to place the 3 inches on this pattern, and we are going to be marking it all across. After you've gotten this, you're going to use your pattern master to connect all those points together. So the cuff is very easy. It's more like a rectangle, a mini rectangle. You have your wrist as the length, and also the width as 3 inches for the width of the cuff. So after we've drawn this out, next we're going to be adding seam allowances all around it. We're adding half an inch seam allowance all around it. And also note that when you cut this, you're going to be cutting 2 pieces on your fabric. So I'll also go ahead and indicate that I'll be cutting the 2 pieces for this when we put this on our fabric to cut out. So after adding the half an inch seam allowance and also indicating that you're cutting 2 of this, we're going to just cut out the pattern, and this is what our sleeve cuff is looking at. Okay, so this is it. You can decide to do a different shape, but for the sake of this tutorial, we are going to stick with our rectangle shape. So now we are going to move to the plackets. Now, for us to do the placket of the sleeve, also get yourself another pattern paper. Okay, so get yourself another fresh pattern paper, and what you do is, on that pattern paper, you're going to just draw a line. That line is just more like a starting point line. Okay, so we'll just draw the line at the bottom of our paper, that will serve as the point where we take all of our measurements. Okay, so for the placket now, after we've taken the straight line, on my shirt sleeve, I measured 4 inches for the placket. Now, I'm also going to be extending that by 1 inch upward. So on my paper, from the straight line that I marked on this paper, I'm going to take 5 inches. So I'll just mark 5 inches on this paper right here, and we'll draw a straight line. So after we've taken the straight line, from this line now we're going to be taking 2 inches inward. Now this 2 inches inward is going to be for the main placket. Okay, so on a shirt pattern, on a shirt sleeve, you have the main placket and the under placket. So for the main placket, I'll take 2 inches from this line that I've just drawn, this straight line that I've just drawn upward. That is 5 inches, and I'm going to be connecting that. Now what I'll do is I'm going to be distributing 5 inches, which is the length of my placket, all across the paper. Now after I have distributed that, I'm going to just go ahead and mark a straight line to connect all of these points. So the essence of distributing the 5 inches all across is just so that we could have a straight line and even line all across. Now I told you from that straight line, that first line, I took 2 inches inward, and that 2 inches is going to be for the main sleeve placket. Okay, now you can see that I have just drawn a straight line from that 2 inches. Now from that line, now I'm going to be taking half an inch. So I'll mark half an inch. Also I'll mark it from below the straight line, that is the vertical line we drew previously, and then I'm going to distribute it up till we get to the top of the line. I just hope you understand. So next I'm going to just use my pencil to draw that half an inch that I just marked now. So after we've taken this half an inch, what we'll do now is to take the underarm placket. Now for us to take the underarm placket, I'm going to take 1 inch. 1 inch is okay, because you wouldn't be needing much for the underarm, because the main placket is going to be an overlap on it. So for the underarm, I will take 1 inch from that line. I hope, just watch this video carefully. From taking the half inch in between, I'll take 1 inch away from that line, and I'll mark a straight line to connect it. So I have 2 inches on one side, I have half an inch in between, and I have 1 inch at the other side. So that, like I said, will be for the main placket and the under placket. Now you know that, like I said, also our main placket is 4 inches, so I'll be marking 4 inches on the main placket, and the extra 1 inch at the top is for that, that triangular or box shape you see at the top of your sleeve placket. So that 1 inch is to create that effect. So I'm just going to demarcate that so that we know that that point is for that extension, that placket extension. So what I'll do now is to also go ahead and add seam allowances all around, but we're going to take away that 1 inch from our under placket, okay, because we don't need that extension for the under placket. So I'll go ahead at my under placket, which is my 1 inch that I marked. Okay, I'll take my 4 inches upward, and I'll just mark 4 inches there, and I'll connect it to the 1 inch that I marked on my main sleeve placket. So just like I said, just watch this video. I don't know how else to explain so that you understand, but just know that this is what it should look like. So after, you can see that I have drawn my 1 inch on the main placket and the under placket. So that point where I drew 1 inch, those points are going to be cut off. I'm going to be cutting out those points. But before cutting out those points, I'll be adding half an inch allowance, seam allowance at all the sides. At the main placket, I'll add half an inch seam allowance, and also at the bottom part as well. I'll be adding 1/2 inch seam allowance, just so that when you stitch this up together, you have something to join the sleeve and the placket. Okay, so you have something to join the sleeve and the cuff together. So I've added 1/2 inch seam allowance all around this pattern that we drew. Next, okay, so now after I have added all of my seam allowances to my pattern, I'm going to be cutting out this pattern, and I'll just watch this video carefully and you will see the way that I cut the pattern for the placket. So the 1 inch extra at the underarm part of this placket will be cut off, so we would not be needing that part. All right, so we won't be needing that part. And also the 1/2 inch in between the main placket and the underarm placket is meant to serve as a seam allowance. So I'm going to be drawing dotted lines in between that 1/2 inch, which is going to be joining the sleeve, the shirt sleeve, and the placket. I hope you understand. So that is where we are going to be joining the main sleeve, that is the shirt sleeve, and the placket. So you can see the way that I'm cutting my placket. I've gone around to cut out the main placket, and you can see that I have also cut out the underarm placket, and I removed the 1 inch and I added 1/2 inch at the top. So you can see that one side of our sleeve placket is longer than the other. So the side that is shorter is going to be overlapping, and while the one will be under, while the one that is longer would be to overlap the short one. So like I also said, the middle point, the 1/2 inch I have at the midpoint in between the main and the underarm placket, is going to serve as a seam allowance. So I'm going to draw dotted lines in between that 1/2 inch, so that when we place it on our main sleeve, we already know where we are stitching. So we are stitching around it, and then the dotted lines will be the part where you have to slash open the placket. Now that all of our pattern has been drafted, we are going to move to transferring these patterns on our fabric. So I have transferred my sleeve placket on my fabric, and also the cuff as well. I cut out 2 pieces for my cuff and 1 piece for the placket. Now if you're doing 2 sleeves, you know you're going to be cutting 2 plackets. That's 1 for each of the sleeve, and for the cuff you'll be cutting 4 pieces. So this is what our placket looks like. I have cut it out, and I also placed my sleeve pattern on my fabric, and I have gone ahead to cut it out as well. So after you've cut out all of these patterns, next we are going to move to actually joining them together. So before I start joining them together, you know, on my sleeve I have that 4 inches that I marked on the sleeve of my sleeve. Okay, so I'm going to use my tracing wheel to trace out that point on my main fabric. The essence is so that I will know exactly where the opening for the placket is going to fall on my sleeve. And note that this opening is always at the back side of the sleeve. So I used my tracing wheel to just trace out that line, so that I know where it is on my pattern. Also, for the cuff of your sleeve, you need to cut out an interfacing without the seam allowance. So I cut out an interfacing for the cuff without my seam allowance all around it. So this is for the interfacing, all right, that we're placing at one side of the cuff. Now for the sleeve placket, I also went ahead to use my tracing wheel to trace out that 1/2 inch in between my placket and make sure that it is visible on my pattern, on my fabric, and I'm just going to highlight it later on. So the essence of doing this is so that I get all my points accurate and exact. So I'll use my chalk and my pattern master to just trace out the point on the sleeve placket that I need to sew. So this point that I'm marking right now on my sleeve placket is the point where I will be joining to my main sleeve. So that half inch in between, that half inch where I draw in between the main placket and the underarm placket is what I have just transferred on my fabric, on my main fabric, just so I know where to stitch when I place it on my sleeve. I hope that is understood. Now we're going to work on the cuff. For the cuff, I've ironed an interfacing on one part of my cuff. You can see that the interfacing is half an inch shorter than the main cuff, and I've also, after ironing it, I've joined the two cuffs together, right sides facing each other. Next, we are going to be stitching up to join these two pieces together. But before we join these two pieces together, I'm going to be folding in half an inch on that part of the cuff where I ironed an interfacing on. I'll be folding it in by half an inch inward. That way you have a clean and a very neat fold at that point on the sleeve. So I just folded in half an inch of one part of the cuff. Note that you're not folding in the two sides of your cuff. So I folded it in. I used my iron to iron down the seam so that it stays down flat and nice. So you can see what it looks like after I have ironed it. I only ironed one part of it. Okay, so now after that, we are going to be joining these two pieces together, and what we do is to join from the bottom to the top and then to the other side. So we are not closing the down part of the cuff, we are joining the sides, the top, and down to the bottom. So that's what we'll do now. So after I have done that, this is what it looks like. I am going to be turning my cuff inside out so you see what it looks like. Also note that when you're turning your cuff, make sure that you use your scissors to poke out the edges so that the edge of your cuff will be looking flat and nice. So after we have done that, I'm going to also just use my pressing iron to just hold it down just so that all the edges come out well and it looks nice and clean. Okay, so now this is what our cuff looks like. I've just given it a good press. So you can see that one side of the cuff is folded in and the other side is still out. So the part that is not folded in, I'll go ahead and still fold in my half an inch inward. So the essence of doing this is just so that the cuff is already ready. You just need to, when you are done making your sleeve, all you need to do is to just put your sleeve inward and then run a stitch on it. So I'm folding in the half an inch just so that it's easier for me to attach to the sleeve when it's time to attach the sleeve. So just fold in the half an inch extra that we have on the other parts of the cuff, and you can use your pressing iron to press it down so that it looks nice and flat. And now that the sleeve cuff is ready, we're going to move to the main sleeve. Now on our sleeve, note that I used my tracing wheel to trace out that line that I had on my sleeve pattern. So I just transferred that line on my sleeve pattern, and this is what I have. Next, what I'll do is I just used my chalk to just kind of highlight it so that I will see it properly. Also, do not forget that this line, we are going to be slashing it open and it's going to be at the back part of the sleeve. So this is what we have here. Next, I'm going to take my sleeve placket and place it on my sleeve. So you make sure that the part that is shorter is also facing at the back part of the sleeve. So I'll place that on my sleeve now. I'm going to just hold down the sleeve placket with pins. Now that line we drew on the main sleeve, make sure that the line corresponds with the dotted lines that we have on our sleeve placket. So I'm just going to highlight the sleeve line, the placket line now, so that you could see what we are working on. Sorry that my chalk was not visible earlier on, but I'll just use my pencil to kind of highlight the point where we'll be stitching on. So you can see I also have that diagonal line placed on my placket, and in between that I'm going to draw my dash lines on the line. So that point where we have the dash line is where we're going to be splitting the sleeve open. So the lines that I have drawn now, the two parallel lines that I've drawn now, is the lines that we are going to be stitching from one side to the top and down to the other side. So we're going to be stitching that part now. So after stitching, this is it. Now after you finish stitching, that dotted line on the sleeve, that dotted line, we're going to slash it open. So I just slashed it open now, and I also slashed the diagonal lines at the top of the sleeve, making sure that you don't slash open your stitches at the sides of your sleeve. So that's what I did now. Sorry, I lost some of the footage. I'm just showing you. After that, you're going to turn your sleeve inside out. Okay, so when you are placing your placket on your main sleeve, you are placing the wrong side of your placket on the right side of your placket on the wrong side of your fabric. So when you turn it inside out, it's the right side is facing the right side of your sleeve. So you can see what we have at the wrong and the right sides, looking clean and neat. Now this is what I have. So next, what we are going to do is to take the underarm of the placket. We are going to be folding in 1/2 inch. Remember that on our pattern we had 1/2 inch at the side, so we'll fold in 1/2 inch at the point of that underarm, and then we fold it in again. So we are folding it twice. We are folding the 1/2 inch inward, and we are folding it again. So when folding, make sure that you fold, you cover your seam allowances. So after folding, we are going to run a stitch from the top to the bottom of that underarm placket. So after we've run a stitch on that, this is what it has. Is staying nice and flat on the sleeve. So next, we are going to be working on the main placket, and also we had 1/2 inch for the main placket. What we'll do also is to fold the main placket 1/2 inch inward. All right, so when you fold it 1/2 inch inward, then what you do next is to make sure that the main placket overlaps the underarm, so it's kind of covering the underarm placket. So after folding in 1/2 inch, you make sure that it covers. You can see the way I just folded it now, it is overlapping the underarm placket, and at the same time you make sure that your fold is covering the stitches that we have at that side of the placket. So you can see the tiny stitch that we have there. When you fold in the 1/2 inch, make sure that it is covering that stitch we have at that point, and it's also overlapping at the underarm part of the placket. So after I'm done folding, on our main pattern we had that line to demarcate the 1 inch that we have extension, that 1 inch extension. So I've just placed a mark on that part, just so that when I take this to my sewing machine to stitch, I know where I'm going to go in, and then I know where I'm going to extend my stitch at. So what I'll do is I'll take this to my sewing machine. I'm going to stitch up until I get to that point. I'll cross it over to the other side, and then I'll go up and stitch up until I stitch the overlap down. But for my overlap, I'm going to fold in a mini triangle. That mini triangle you see at the sleeve, at your placket. So I'm going to fold in the mini triangle, and then I will stitch all around. So that's what I'll do. I just folded it now, so I'm going to stitch from the bottom. Okay, so we'll stitch from the bottom till we get to that division, and then up until we get to the triangle, and back down there at the other side of the placket. So after I have stitched it, this is what I have. You can see my sleeve and my placket. They are all looking very nice and beautiful and clean as well. So after we've gotten this, next we're going to fold our sleeve into 2, and we're going to stitch it close with the seam allowance that we left on our pattern. So I'll just fold it over like so, and run a stitch from the top to the bottom of the sleeve. So now we've closed off the sleeve. Next, what we are going to do is remember that 0.75 inch extra we took at the sleeve cuff. We're going to be taking our pleat, and then our pleat is going to be at the right side of the sleeve. All right, so I'll just take my tape and mark the allowance, that is the excess that we created on our pattern, is what I am placing on my sleeve. So you need to pleat that part, otherwise it's not going to align with your sleeve cuff. So after you've pleated the excess on the pattern we created on the sleeve, now I've just held them down at the sewing machine, so you can see my cuff is neat, ready to be sewn to the sleeve. So what you need to do is to take your cuff and your sleeve, feed the sleeve into the cuff, and make sure that it is 1/2 inch you're feeding into the cuff. Now after you fed the sleeve into the cuff, you can see that folding in the sleeve, the sleeve cuff, initially it's helpful, because all you need to bother yourself about right now is just to run a stitch from the bottom to the top and then to the sides of the cuff, and that will be all for the sleeve. So we're going to just insert our sleeve into the cuff now. After I have inserted my sleeve into the cuff, I will run a top stitch all around our sleeve, and our sleeve pattern for the shirt is ready, guys. Okay, so guys, this is what it looks like now after I have done the stitch. I have top stitched all around the sleeve. This is the inside and that is the outside, so you can see how clean and neat our sleeve, our shirt sleeve, is looking like. I'm going to open it up so that you can see the top stitch that we made at the sleeve. So you can see the inside of the sleeve and all of the top stitches that we made. Alright guys, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you like this video. If you do, please support me by subscribing to my channel and watch this video to the end. I'll see you guys in my next video. Do take care and remain positive wherever you are. Bye.